Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I'm on a special day. My friend Brian is letting me drive his Model Y on a trip. I am at a Tesla Supercharger station at a Wawa in West Palm Beach, Florida. First impressions of driving the Model Y with, he has FSD, I'm using Navigate on Autopilot. I've ridden in FSD Beta 9.1 or 9.2 with Tesla Tino Raphael. It's amazing, and yet compared to FSD Beta, it's not that great. But really amazing to watch a car. It drove most of the way here. This is about a 40-mile trip so far. I am charging. One of the challenges of this trip is I'm going to Sebring, Florida. Sebring does not have a supercharger. Sebring is a fairly large city. Well, it's a small city, but it's a city. It does not have a supercharger. There are destination chargers. The experience of West Palm Beach supercharging. So it's going to be a fairly long trip. From my house, it was about 140 miles to the place I'm going in Sebring, and the Model Y does not have enough range to do there and back, even fully charged. We charged it to 93 or 95% before we left. So about 40 miles on the way there, I stopped at this supercharger station. It's charging now. I'm gonna pop in to get breakfast at Wawa and continue on to Sebring, and I'll report further. I was really, because I haven't driven Teslas that much. I've driven my friend Brian's Model 3 and this Model Y before, but not lengthy and not on a highway. I was impressed with how quiet the ride is. And I think he has the upgraded performance tires, which are probably noisier, but it was a very, very quiet ride. I had to turn the stereo down. I'm used to when I get on the highway, I have to turn the stereo up, and I had to turn the stereo down because it was such a quiet ride. Drove through a lot of heavy traffic. Navigate on Autopilot did pretty well. I think maybe on regular streets, it's not as good. On the interstate highway, it's pretty amazing. Its choice of lane changes, sometimes it's not thinking as far ahead as I do. So it was trying to make a lane change, and I would not confirm it because there was an accident up ahead, and there was a sign that said that the right lane was blocked ahead, and it wanted to make a right lane change to get ready for our exit, but our exit was past the accident. So it didn't read the sign, but that's Navigate on Autopilot. I think FSD Beta version 11 will probably read that sign and figure out what's going on. Maybe it'll have better navigation to see where the slowdown is. But still, like, amazing to see how well it's doing. Really excited, really enjoying this, and I'll keep going. Random moment of fate. I got the sizzly bacon croissant at Wawa, 420 calories. So I'm on Navigate on Autopilot right now in the Model Y. You can see there's a truck passing me. We're gonna switch. So we're on Navigate on Autopilot. We're driving up one of the straightest roads I've ever been on. This is called Beeline Highway. There are a bunch of trucks on this road. This goes from Navigate on Autopilot tries to stop for traffic lights. This is the difference between Navigate on Autopilot and FSD Beta. It's telling me to apply. One of my criticisms is the alert to apply force to the steering wheel is way out of your field of view if you're watching the road. So here we are watching the road, and then at some point it's going to tell me to apply slight pressure to the steering wheel, and that notice is down here, and it'll flash blue, but it's not so easy to notice that instruction. I'm keeping my hands on the wheel, anyway, we're driving along. This is a long drive. I'm driving 60 miles an hour because I'm trying to maximize range, because this is a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit road. I'm trying to maximize range because I'm driving to Sebring and there's no supercharger there, and I'm pretty much going to Sebring and coming back with a short stop in the middle. And if I drive at 65 or 70, which I would normally drive on this road, then I won't have the range. But driving at 60 miles an hour should really increase the range of the vehicle. So we'll see how that does. There's a graph. Let's see. You can see the graph shows what my energy usage is. Or what the trip looks like. And you can see it's projecting my range at 225 miles from here, which is a step up. So anyway, this is like the straightest road in the world. This is the easiest job for Navigate on Autopilot. There's very little traffic. You can see we're being passed by a pickup right now, and you can see it showing up in the display. It's showing it as like an SUV or a van or something, but it's a pickup with a cap on it. 60 miles an hour. We'll see how it does on range. This is a test. Hopefully we can get back to the same supercharger at Wawa that we were at earlier. And driving on Interstate 95 earlier with Navigate on Autopilot was much more interesting, I guess is the right word, because there was a lot of vehicles all over the place, and it handled it really, really well. I don't think it handles city streets as well, Navigate on Autopilot. I think FSD Beta is a lot better for that. Let's see how it does with this stuff on the side of the road here. Let's see if it even notices this stuff. I don't see whether is it picking up these vehicles? It's not showing these vehicles. There it was. It's not showing much on the display. I think FSD Beta, the user interface, shows a lot more on the display. Here's another one. Let's see if it shows up. Didn't even show up, but I think on FSD Beta that would show up on the display. So we'll see. We should be driving FSD Beta in my soon-to-be my car from Omar in about 2 or 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I think, with FSD Beta 10, and then I'll lose it, and then I'll get it again when I apply for public beta. Well, part of fun of the adventure, I was driving along, recording my last clip while I was driving, and apparently I didn't pay enough attention to the indications from Autopilot, and it locked me out of auto steer for the rest of the trip. So I decided to take a few minutes of break in Indiantown. This is a nice little park, family park in Indiantown, no one here, to see if it will let me re-engage auto steer if I take a few minutes break and restart the trip. Took off navigation and everything. We'll see if that works. Otherwise, I'll have to steer the whole way. Oh no, what a difficult day. So I've been driving for a while now, and I have to say, for me, Navigate on Autopilot is a little frustrating. The constant nags, the idea that it's easy to drive a Tesla and let the Tesla drive itself and not pay attention is really, really not credible. It is a constant nag. It's frustrating. I wonder how many FSD owners get frustrated with the constant nags, the autopilot drivers. I'm going to try to get used to it. I called Brian. He gave me some tips. Adjust the speed wheel rather than tug the wheel to show your paint, whatever. But it's striking how difficult that is. Oh, and the car brakes for these flashing lights on the side of the road that are for like no passing zone. It like slows down for a bunch of flashing yellow lights, and it slows down for green lights sometimes. I think that's because we're on Navigate on Autopilot. This is, I forget the name of the lake, but we're in Sebring, and there's this gorgeous lake in Sebring. I am almost to my destination, visiting my mother in her new assisted living facility. And mostly enjoyed the ride. I have to say that the nag, the constant reminders to touch the wheel or do something to get it, it's really annoying. And I genuinely wonder how many people decide not to use autopilot because of the nag, and whether that not using autopilot causes more crashes than people who aren't paying attention when autopilot is driving. I'm trying to look far out in the road, and the place where the nag is out of my view. I don't normally look at the center of the dashboard and down below, and I find that maybe people get used to it. I'm sure some do, but maybe some don't. And maybe this causes fewer people to use the safest feature that exists on any car on the road. And I really think the Tesla team should look at the data to see whether, and maybe do polling if that's the better way of doing it, what percentage of Tesla drivers stop using autopilot shortly after they try it because they get tired of the nag. Is there a way of measuring that in the data? Because if that answer is high, then that's a bad sign for the nag, which is the result of idiots like Jason Torchinsky at Jalopnik and Missy Cummings at Duke University putting pressure, I'm not on autopilot right now, putting pressure on people like Tesla, companies like Tesla and Elon Musk, to make their ADAS systems comply, advanced driver assistance systems or whatever it's called, to make them comply with something that there's no scientific basis. I haven't seen any indication that these nags make it safer. Have they checked that? Is the data in that the nags make it safer? Because if the nags discourage people from using auto, like personally, I'm like, gee, I don't know if I want to use autopilot with these nags. It's annoying. You know, does that cause more people to drive without autopilot, and does that end up leading to more accidents because autopilot makes you safer? Interesting question. I would encourage the Tesla team to take a look at that. I realize hopefully it's not going to matter soon. FSD is going to be ready soon, you know, full out of beta maybe in a few months or 6 months or whatever, but the nags are stupid. I'm sorry, the nags are stupid. Find a better way maybe, but this is just awful. You know, autopilot's great. I love it. It's fantastic. If it wasn't for the nags, it would be a lot better. So I'm at my mother's facility and I found a plug. I got approval to use it, and it is plugged in. Really easy to set up. Time remaining 24 plus hours. It's charging at 1 kilowatt, 12 amps, 119 volts. A little bit more driving here. I am off autopilot because it's too annoying to do this while on autopilot, because you have to pay too much attention to autopilot. When you're driving on an empty road, it's actually easier to drive without autopilot. Even now the car like prompts me if I get too close to a lane line on an empty road. You know, I don't know. It's a little too much of a nag, if you ask me. I was driving on a 2-lane small road in the middle of nowhere, and I was driving pretty much over the center line, because that's what you do on a 2-lane road in the middle of nowhere when there's no cars around, because it's safer than being near the edge of the road because something might happen. I'm on cruise control and the car just slowed up because there was a car that made a left turn in front of us. We had plenty of room, but it's being extra careful. So it's a little this is not FSD beta, this is FSD Navigate on Autopilot. It's a little hypersensitive to flashing yellow lights. It seems the UI picks up some weird things. We were passing by a mailbox that was like house number 352, and it registered it as a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, which clearly wasn't. But this, again, this is not FSD beta. This is the FSD that regular cars have. So I would say this: FSD or Navigate on Autopilot is a huge jump from regular car if you can get over the nags, which is I'm struggling with, and FSD beta is a huge leap over this, and I believe that FSD beta version 10 is going to be a huge leap over what I experienced in beta 9. So really looking forward to that. We'll experience that. Maybe I'll experience it before. Maybe Teslatino Raphael from Teslatino will take me out for another ride before I go to California. Certainly we'll experience beta 10 on the drive back from California. The other thing just to note is the range issue. So this is a long-range Model Y with about 300 miles of range. Driving to Sebring is, as I count the range, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. It should be close. But I ended up stopping in West Palm Beach, which is 40 miles north of my house, to charge at a Wawa gas station, Supercharger. Drove up to Sebring, saw my mom, did an errand, or met friends for lunch, I should say. And then now I'm driving back, and I don't have enough range to get to the West Palm Beach location, which it should work. So, you know, 300 miles of range, and you know, I'm driving 60 miles an hour where everybody else is going 70. I'm getting passed on this 2-lane road. I normally would go 70 miles an hour on this road. I'm going 60 miles an hour to conserve electricity so that I make it to I'm going to Port St. Lucie instead of West Palm Beach because it's 20 miles closer. So definitely when you're on a trip and a path where there's no superchargers, which hopefully as superchargers expand, this problem will shrink. But if you're on a trip where superchargers are rare, then you might have to go out of your way to make your trip work. Now, I'm not in any particular hurry today, and I was doing this to experiment. It's not like this is my, be all end all of my existence. But it's something to be aware of, is if you're going to get a Tesla, and I've got one coming that's got about 300 miles of range left on it after, 70,000 miles, you got to be careful when you're going to do a trip like this. You got to think ahead to where you're going to charge. Now, hopefully there will be maybe Tesla will make sure they put a supercharger in Sebring. That would solve a lot of my problems. Sebring is, there's a fair amount of people that drive through Sebring. It's not that much, but it's an important town. It's the Sebring International Raceway, and it's south of Orlando, and it's not the main way people would go from South Florida to Orlando, but it is a way people can go. A lot of people boat up there, so if you're going to tow a boat, or you're going to tow there's a lot of RVs, if you can tow a travel trailer, it would be really nice. And there are destination chargers in Sebring. There's just no supercharger. And in retrospect, I should have looked at those destination chargers a little harder and maybe had lunch at one of those. I had lunch at a barbecue place I know and like, and they let me plug into their wall, but that probably added only like 4 or 5 miles in the 40 minutes or so we were there. That's just not enough. So you need a destination charger minimum, and really you want supercharger access. So that's a big deal. Just one other detail about what I'm doing to manage range. I turned the temperature in the cabin up to 77 degrees, where I think Brian, who lent me the car, has it normally set to 71. I probably would have had it set to 73 or 74 for my own comfort, but knowing I was pushing the range limits of the car, I adjusted the air conditioning to make it a little bit not as cold. It's a hot day out, so that the air conditioning doesn't work as hard, and maybe in theory that saves me a few miles of range. And then I'm going 60 and a 65 right now. I'm on a 2-lane road that's not a lot of traffic on it, so I'm not really impeding traffic by going 60 and a 65. Normally I would go at least 65 on this road. I'd probably go 70 or 75. But just to conserve energy, it looks like I'm going to have 12% left on the battery pack when I get to the charger. I'm going to a charger that's out of the way because I don't want to end up at like 2% range or run the risk of, running out of battery and needing to get towed. So I'm trying to be careful, and I think this is just something to be aware of. If you have a Tesla, you have 300 miles of range, and you're going on certain trips, you've got to make sure it's going to work. If you're driving around town on a daily basis and you're plugging into your garage at night when you get home, no big deal. But when you're doing these long trips, then, if it's something, there's a lot of superchargers on the way, no big deal. But if you're going somewhere out of the way, like Sebring, Florida, and I think there's a lot of places in the country that are out of the way, then you got to be careful. You got to think about what you're doing. So definitely when we plan the trip from Los Angeles to Florida, we're going to have to look and make sure we know what we're doing. I'm pretty sure it's going to work out good, but we're really going to have to make sure we got it down. Okay, so I'm at the Supercharger in Fort Pierce, Florida. Port St. Lucie was more on the way, but that's 120 kilowatt chargers, and it was full. There were no empty stalls, and one of the stalls is out of order. I'm again at a Wawa gas station and convenience store. I already liked Wawa a lot, and I appreciate Wawa a lot more now because of, if you don't know Wawa, Wawa is a gas station and convenience store chain that has really nice not restaurant, but sandwiches and convenience store inside. It's clean, the bathrooms are clean, the prices are reasonable, everything's great. I was already a fan of Wawa. My kids like Wawa, just going there for like, I don't know if they have soft serve ice cream or something. A lot of people like the coffee. Sandwiches are pretty good. So I'm low carbing it, so I'm not having sandwiches. But anyway, little props to Wawa here for being ahead of the game on supercharging. I'd love to see McDonald's and Starbucks get in on superchargers. That would make a lot of sense to me to have superchargers. Those are very, very common chains that they're almost everywhere. So if you had a supercharger station at every McDonald's and every Starbucks, you'd have superchargers everywhere. So I would love to, at least destination chargers. That would be a huge improvement. But superchargers, 150 kilowatt or 250 kilowatt would be a big jump, and that would really make it easy to go anywhere. But Wawa gas stations are great. This is a great sign. This is great progress. I think Wawa is really smart because, you know, you stop here for 20 minutes. And I got to say, the 250, well, I guess we're charging at 150 kilowatts. Maybe we're speeding up. I was down to like 11%. And I think as it's approaching 50%, it's speeding up. So now it's up to 175 kilowatts and going faster. So it's saying there's 11 minutes left to continue the trip. I don't know if that's 11 minutes to, it's charging at like 800, it's up to 200 kilowatts, charging at 830. Let me film this. So we're charging at, let's see, 195 kilowatts, 815 miles per hour. It seems to be pacing itself. I think in theory it can get up to 250 kilowatts. It's raining out. I got a little bit wet getting the thing in. We're down to 179 kilowatts, 180. I don't know why it fluctuates. I'm sure other people have explained that. So the navigation was sending me by way of Port St. Lucie, which is more on the way, but 150 kilowatt charger, so it would be slower. Like I said, I think I already said this, they were full, and then one of them was out of order. I arrived at this charging station. You can see there's 2 empty bays over here. There were 2 empty according to the app. When I got here, there were 3 or 4 empty. That makes it really easy to get charged and get charged quickly and get on the road. Anyway, good experience. Learning a lot, hands-on with a Tesla. One thing I will say, I've had people tell me, oh, once you drive a Tesla, you won't want to drive another car. I like driving it, but I like driving my car. I have a Volkswagen Passat. Is it faster? Yeah. I love the fact that you put a charger in your garage and you basically, when you're driving around town on your daily life, you never go to a gas station again. I love the fact that you never get an oil change. But for me, I'll just say for me, the driving experience is not, it's better. I want to say it's better. The navigation is really well integrated. The screen, the user screen, I can definitely see, you know, it takes a little getting used to the user interface, but the user screen is definitely better than the interface in a regular car. But honestly, the interface in my car, if you've been driving gas cars your whole life, it's not that complicated. So there's little glitches with my Volkswagen I don't like that I haven't experienced in this vehicle, so that's a good sign. My Bluetooth cuts out in my Volkswagen for some reason. It hasn't cut out in this car. So it's probably a Volkswagen problem, not an iPhone problem. But I think the Tesla cult view that, oh, driving in a Tesla is so special and you'll never want to drive a nice car again. It's better. I'm not going to say it's not better. It's better. It's not that much better. And especially, like, I think if you like Autopilot, if you enjoy Autopilot, if you feel that Autopilot makes your life better, then yeah, it's definitely better. I'm not that keen on Autopilot yet. I think Autopilot, honestly, on it's cool, it's fun to watch. It's not good enough yet. And I think if I'm on a longer drive and I'm tired, and if I wasn't getting nagged, if it wasn't for the constant nag to touch the wheel, to jerk the wheel, whatever, a couple times I tried to put slight pressure on the wheel and it disengaged. So, and there was a moment, I was driving here, it was a really, really heavy rain, and there was a moment where Autopilot disengaged, that the rain was too heavy for it and it couldn't take it. And I mean, it was a really heavy rain. It was a really, really hard rain. And I had slowed down to 15 miles an hour below the limit. I mean, we were in a 65 zone. I was going 50. And it's still, I honestly, I couldn't see. So I thought it was a good choice for it to disengage, I guess. Once I took over, I think I watch the road better when I'm driving. I think that's another thing. I think there's this really big issue with whether the nags make you pay less attention to the road and it's distract your eye down to the screen. I kind of wonder about that. One other thing I wasn't aware of with the Model Y is how small the rear window is. When you're looking in the rear view mirror, you don't have much view out the rear window. I wasn't prepared for that. It's something, I drove this once before, but I didn't really notice it then, and I'm noticing it now. It's a very limited rear view. I don't know, I didn't notice it being a problem when I was driving, but it's a striking difference with like my Volkswagen or my wife's Mazda CX-9. It's a really striking difference with pretty much any other car I've ever driven. that the window is so small. I think it's good enough. I think you can see what you need to see. It's just, it's noticeably small. You can see back there. That's not a lot of rear glass to look out of. And I mean, you can see the rearview mirror works, but it just surprises me a little bit. As usual, please check out the merchandise at elonbits.com. Support this channel on Patreon. Thanks to the Vasa Law Firm in Sweden and all my Patreon supporters for helping that channel grow. Check out my book, Fair DUI. Make sure you're safe in a traffic stop. Even if you're sober, it's worth reading. Link to that in the description below. And thank you so much for watching.